a brand new flow. Stories are brewing with Joe. Pull up a seat, let your truth unfold. Real talk, real hearts, real souls. It's coffee and conversations with Joe, where your voice has room to grow. No judgment, just love that flows. Coffee and conversation.
Good morning, everybody. We have a special interview today right here on Coffee Conversation. We're live at the Filter Coffee Parlor. The house is full of people are here, and y'all been watching us all week long. And is he in the building? Yes. Doug Jones is in the building. I am super excited. We're going to get right to the interview, and let's get into this, y'all. So share it out there. Make sure you guys follow us. If you got any questions, put them in the comments. And we'll see, can we get to some of your questions today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Doug Jones, how you doing this morning?
Good to see you,
Welcome
buddy.
to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. It's great to have
You got
a
your coffee now.
Hot cup of coffee. Hot cup of coffee.
That was a story that was happening right before the show
That's right.
about you brought some kind of cold coffee.
Yeah. You don't do cold coffee in the
Not
South.
in the South?
No,
All right,
no.
all right. So how's it been going on the campaign trail?
It has been hectic.
Uh-huh.
It has been incredibly busy, but it's incredibly exciting. I got to tell you, Joe, there's something going on out there. People, I've said for a long time, and one of the reasons I got in this race, because I think this is an opportunity for change, not just in across the country with people are seeing with the House and the Senate. I think it's a change in Alabama. I think there's some serious things going on, and people are looking for change. So we're really excited. We've got a primary coming up on May 19th, and I'm hoping everybody gets out for and votes. And hoping that we can get past that. I feel very good about getting past that primary, moving into November. Uphill battle, for a Democrat like me in Alabama. But I'm telling you, things are worth fighting for, and we're willing to take on the challenge. And I feel really, really good about where this is going.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come out and have coffee and conversation with me this morning. And I want to go here with you. There's this thing that I heard you talking about on the campaign trail called a change ticket.
Yeah.
Right. And so people are always talking about change,
Right.
hope and change. Things are going to change.
Right.
Can you explain to me and the listening audience, what do you mean when you say change ticket?
Yeah, no, look, I really appreciate you asking about that, because I think it's one of the most exciting things that you're going to see going forward into the November election.
Okay.
And that is, let's put it, I call it the change ticket because I try to stay away from Republican versus Democrat, Democrat versus Republican, even though we got separate primaries. I get that. But since, this is the first time since 2006, that Democratic Party in Alabama is going to field a candidate in every one of the 7 constitutional offices: governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, secretary of state, treasurer, auditor, and commissioner of agriculture and industry. It's the first time since 2006. And that's what I'm talking about by change.
Okay.
This is a sea change, I think, in Alabama, because it's not just it's not just somebody to put their name up there. These are really strong candidates that are going to go into the November election that is going to give people true alternatives to vote. They're going to give them alternatives in every one of those races with not only issues that affect that particular office, but the whole approach to government in Alabama, making Alabama government more responsive to people, making the Alabama government more transparent with what's going on, so that we know how that $1 billion prison's the money's being spent to build that $1 billion prison. How we know that things are going to be happening in the Alabama legislature. So we call it a change ticket because I really believe that is the kind of thing that Alabama voters are looking for, voting for change and having those choices in all those elections. It's really exciting. And as I go across the state, and these are folks that I recruited. I literally spent 2 months of the first 2 months of the campaign on the phone recruiting, and got just phenomenal folks. And that is one of the things, as I travel around the state, people get most excited about, is the opportunity for choices in all those elections. So that's what we're talking about with the change ticket. Watch for it. There's only 2 of us who have primary opposition. The other 5 are the Democratic nominees. already, and that's in the Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State, Auditor, Treasurer, and Commissioner of Agriculture. Me and the Lieutenant Governor candidate have got primary opposition, feel good about both of us. So we are looking forward to getting through this primary and having that ticket for the whole state of Alabama to see.
This is Coffees and Conversations, right? So let's go here. This is Alabama.
Yeah.
Red state Republican, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, how do you think, and do you really think you can win right here in Birmingham, Alabama? And what would it take? It's okay if I call you Doug.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
What would it take, Doug, for Alabama to actually make this change and make this ticket change where there'll be a Democratic governor? What would it take for you?
Well, remember, I've done this before. Okay.
Special election.
Special election.
2017.
Okay. 1.3 million people voted, which was a high turnout
Right.
for any election in Alabama. So what I tell folks is don't just look at who's won and who's lost. You know, this is not a sporting event. This is not a game. Alabama's not a stadium. We don't look at just who wins and loses. Look at the number of votes that were cast. Okay. Even in Alabama, like every other state in the country, we vote more in presidential races than any other race. Now, I got to tell you, that's a little counterintuitive because the state races mean more to people in Alabama than the federal races do. The governor, local races like the mayor mean more. That's where the rubber meets the road. But for whatever reason, people, even with the Electoral College, knowing that winning Alabama was going to be, you're not going to get those non-electoral votes, people still come out more in those presidential races. We had a record turnout in 2000 when I lost my reelection bid, but I got 920,000 votes. That means that in Alabama, 920,000 people voted for Doug Jones. 70,000 of those people voted for Doug Jones, but also voted for Donald Trump. And so when you take that number, that would have been enough votes to win in any gubernatorial race in history. Okay. Anyone we've ever done. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to find those 900,000 people. We're going to find them. There's some of them here today. Okay. We're going to find them. We're going to call them. We're going to build this precinct by precinct. And that is our hard count number. That's what we're trying to do. If we can get the Doug Jones voters out, we win this race. And therein lies the path. That's the path to victory, by going precinct by precinct. And as they said after the November election, that one of the things that Democrats did wrong, we're not going where people are. Well, we're going to go where people are. And we're going to send everybody on that change ticket to where people are. People have their strengths in certain areas. They have weaknesses in other areas. We're going to make up for that. We're going to run a coordinated campaign to try to find those 920,000 votes, get those people out plus another 10 or 15%. And that's not only how we win, that's why we win.
That's why you're going to win.
That's why we're going to win.
Let's go here, because I hear what you're saying, and I see it's part because you just laid out the numbers. But because you don't lay out the numbers now, what is it going to take for the people? Because right now, let's be honest, Doug, the environment in politics is nasty right now, regardless of what side of the fence that you're on.
Absolutely.
No one really wants to trust anybody.
That's right. 2017,
they trusted Doug Jones, the politician. This is 2026. Why should people still trust you? Should people still trust you?
You know, that's a really good question. And that's exactly why we're going to be reaching out and talking to people to remind them of what I did. Even if they didn't vote for me in 2020 because of their political allegiances and a lot of straight ticket voting, most folks really liked what I did in the United States Senate. They knew I reached out across the aisle and got things done. You know, when I was in the Senate, I was only there 3 years. But in that 3 years, I was the lead co-sponsor. Well, I was a co-sponsor on probably 200 bills. But I was the lead co-sponsor with a Republican on about 26 bills that got signed into law. I don't believe that there has probably been a freshman U.S. senator that had that kind of success. You just don't do that in the United States Senate. The Senate doesn't all operate that way. It's hard to get bills passed. And so we were able to accomplish that because we reached across the aisle. People knew that they could work with us. We were able to work and to to bend and do the things with other folks to get things that were important to them into these bills, things that were important to me in Alabama into these bills. So we're going to be reminding people of my record in the U.S. Senate, my record here in Birmingham as the United States Attorney in the 16th Street Baptist Church bombing cases, the Eric Rudolph case, which happened at the women's clinic just right down from road from where we are right now. So we're going to be reminding people and putting that contrast with who I expect to be the Republican nominee, and that is Senator Tuberville, and his lack of a record, what he's not done in the Senate, has no bills, the way he has blocked the promotions of generals, the way he has benefited himself by insider trading with his stocks and futures as a United States senator, and really made a lot of money doing that. That's how I think people are pay attention and will vote, and not only cross the aisle, but it'll get people out. They will understand, I think, and know that we can make a difference. We can make a difference in whatever we do, and that's the change that I think people are going to be looking for.
And as we sit there, I'm listening to you, right? I kind of feel, you guys out there, if you know, let me know if you agree. It feels like we're going back to the old way of listening to our politicians. They're sitting in our living room talking to us, and they're telling us, and we can relate to you, right? You grew up in Fairfield.
Absolutely.
So you understand right here in Birmingham, Alabama, what this is all about. You understand the tough times. You understand when some people are suffering right now. Gas prices are high.
No question.
Right? You understand what's going on in the streets of Birmingham, Alabama. What's going to make you different? Because you've seen all these things with the current government that we do have in place. What would you do different if you were elected? What should we expect to see out of you?
As governor?
As governor.
Well, first of all, the one thing that you're going to see with a Doug Jones as governor that you haven't seen in a long time, and that's to see a governor out around the state. I'm not going to just sit behind a big old desk down in Montgomery, Alabama, and wait for the legislature to do what the hell they do and send me bills to either sign or veto. I'm going to be out promoting things. You know, we haven't had a statewide office holder that has promoted and been a champion for Medicaid expansion. Look at all the people that are out there right now that need health care, that could benefit, not only them personally, but their communities benefit from expanding Medicaid. We haven't done it. We haven't had a champion out there talking about it, not on a statewide basis. We've had some legislators and some mayors talk about it, but we haven't had a statewide champion. We don't have a lottery. We should have had a lottery years ago, like every other state in the South. Okay. We don't have a ballot initiative so that people can do the things they want. We still have income. We still have tax on groceries. We still, they let it lapse that there was no tax on overtime. Those are the things that we're going to be out there talking about. But the main thing that you'll see differently is you'll see a very active governor out with the people, out talking to people, doing things like this. Okay. You're not going to see a Governor Tuberville doing podcasts unless it's with Steve Bannon or somebody else. You're not going to see him here in Birmingham. You're not going to see him doing things. So you're going to see me out being a champion for these, working with the legislature, because here's the thing, and I truly believe this. The legislature is going to remain in control of the Republicans. But if Alabama elects a Democrat as governor, and hopefully a couple of other folks, at least a couple of other folks on that change ticket, then I think that the legislature is going to see we might need to mend our ways a little bit. We might need to start working to listen to folks a little bit, because if Doug Jones gets elected governor, it's telling me something. And it's telling me something that the state of Alabama is not satisfied with the job we're doing, which, by the way, is consistent with every poll that we've seen for the last 20 years. People want to change.
I think when people are, when we go to elections, right, we go vote. We see names.
Yeah.
Right. And so we just go by the name. We don't know their records because we're busy every single day. And this is what I'm talking about when you say this change ticket. You got a lot of new people coming out.
Yeah.
How are you planning on getting people to know these people and trust these people in this amount of time to get the Democratic Party that you need? Because even though when you win governor, you still gonna need some help to get all these things done.
Absolutely.
So what does that look like for the people watching? What do they need to do? And how do we get them to get the information that they need? Because if you're the governor, but you still got, a Republican in there, nothing gets done. We look at what we see, well, he said this, but he couldn't get it done. But you don't have time enough to explain why I wasn't able to get it done. That's one question. The other question is, you said you're going to be out here as a governor, Doug?
Yeah.
Walking around talking to us,
Yeah.
coming back to podcast and stuff?
I did it as a senator. I'll come back.
You sure?
I'll tell you what.
Y'all see this out here?
No. I'm going to tell you what. Joe, I'll make a deal with you. I've done
Okay.
a lot of podcasts
Right.
and a lot of good things. I'll make a deal with you. The week after I'm inaugurated,
Okay.
you will be my first podcast. Right here, Phil, the top.
All right. Y'all heard it right here, right?
That's a deal. But look, I think it's really important
Mhm.
that a governor do those kind of things. I mean, look, you can criticize Donald Trump a lot, and I do. Okay, but the one thing he has done has been accessible. Whether it is bringing the media into the Oval Office, whether it is his social media, whatever, he is visible and he is seen. Now, unfortunately, it sometimes scares me to death with what I see, but I think it's important in this day and age, especially with this kind of medium, with new media, with podcasts, with social media, that a governor be out there and be visible and be accessible and talk. A governor needs to have these kind of conversations. They need to have conversations with people that are here that are just, coming in for morning coffee about what's affecting their lives. Because the governor should not be just like a pure ego trip, which is quite frankly why I think other people are running in this for this.
Mhm.
It should be a public service. You're a public servant, and you need to be not only talking to people but listening to people, understanding their cares and concerns. So yeah, and so to get back to your first point, though, how we're going to do that? We're going to do this. We're going to be sending out. I want everybody that's on that ticket to come do this podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone. We'll line them up. We'll help line them up. We're going to have a coordinated campaign where we're going to be running all over the state. Where I can't go, I'm going to have Phil Lenzler, Lieutenant Governor, go. Where he can't go, I'm going to have Ron Sparks running for Agriculture and Industry. Ross Houston, Violet Edwards. Wayne Rogers from right here. Jeff McLaughlin, Attorney General. And it's interesting you ask about that, because I literally just saw some polling yesterday where the only really super contested races right now are going on in the Republican primary for a lieutenant governor, for the U.S. Senate, for Secretary of State. And if you look, nobody's hardly polling above 10%. They don't know them. Even the Republicans.
Right.
Our problem has been this. In the last 20 to 30 years, people don't know, and they go in and they vote a straight ticket,
Right.
and they get what they pay for. Okay. And we ain't getting our money's worth.
Right.
And so what we're going to be doing is trying to make sure that we do things like this to go where people are, so that they're getting not only in news, but they're getting information about the candidates and who we stand for. That's
We have
how
a
we
lot
get
of
the
young-
info out.
We have a lot of young people here in the UAB area.
Yep.
And that's going to be a great help and a great push for you.
Yep.
How do you plan to reach out to them?
Well, one at a time. I mean, we're going to go. I was at the University of Alabama in
Mhm.
Tuscaloosa last night with a group of college Democrats and folks from the community. So we're going to do the same thing. I did something at the UAB college Democrats about a month ago, I guess. But we're going to do this more beginning in the fall, because they're about to start going into exams and start trying to spread out and go home for the summer.
Right.
We're going to be building a college organization across the state with a core group of folks that includes the HBCUs, the junior colleges, and we were going to try to get to as many of those. I love going to, I'm going to tell you,
Mhm. Talk
since
to
you
me.
brought it up,
You talk to me.
last night we're doing, it kind of answers the other question too. We've started doing listening sessions, at least one a week,
Okay.
where I go to some place in the state of Alabama. We set up 2 microphones and we go live too. It's not a podcast. It's just a live. And then we use that. We go live across platforms. Then we'll kind of cut the recording up and use it for social media. We did that last night in Tuscaloosa on the University of Alabama campus. And I got to tell you, the questions I got in that live session from those college students
Right.
were heads and above better than most that I get. in other sessions. And here's why. More and more young people today are realizing that their vote counts, elections have consequences, and it's about their future. It's not as much about mine, but it is about their future and their families and their communities. So we're seeing more and more young people get engaged, and they're getting engaged with us, and they're going to get engaged with this change ticket. And we're going to be all over the younger vote. And I won that vote a lot, 2017 and 2020.
You did?
I got a whole bunch of folks that have been registered to vote that came of age since that time.
Right.
But I'll tell you, it's been fascinating for me and my wife as we travel around the country. The number of people under the age of 30 that come up to us and say, it was because of your race in 2017 that I got involved in politics. It is that hope that we gave people in 2017 that we are rekindling in 2026. And I think people need that hope today more than they did in 2017.
Wow. If you guys are just locking in right now, we're live at the Filter Coffee Pub with the one and only Doug Jones. He's in the building. If anybody in the audience would like to ask any question, please make their way over to the producer's table. We have a microphone. You can ask any questions if you guys want to. I want to go here with you because this is a conversation over coffee. I want to know from you, Doug, as a candidate running for governor, do you understand where we are as the people living here, the pains that we are going through, what we're seeing day to day right now? And this has nothing to do with politics, but if I'm going to vote for you, I want to know that you understand me. Can you tell me some of the things that you understand that I'm going through, the people in this audience is going through? Can you explain some of those things? And so politicians talk about this big picture, right? Yeah. But do you truly understand what we are going through and how it's tough for us not to be able to pay our bills?
You know, I think it's a combination of things, and I think a lot of people are different. Every community is a little bit different. Every family is a little bit different, and they have their own challenges. Mm-hmm. I like to think that my life experiences helps me to understand that. As we sit here today, I may not know, but it wouldn't take but a few minutes of a conversation for me to understand, because I will have known somebody in my life that has gone through something similar. And it doesn't matter whether it's a family member, whether it's somebody of a different religion, of a different race. My life experience has been growing up in Fairfield, going through a lot of things, going to the University of Alabama, practicing law here in Alabama, becoming the United States attorney, traveling the state. I've seen so much and I've heard so much. I can't sit here and say what X is going through. I can talk general. I know that nobody asked for a war with Iran that is producing high gas prices, but we got it, and we got to deal with it. That's why I called for at least a moratorium on collecting that 30 cents a gallon gasoline tax to give people an opportunity to adjust to these new gas taxes. I know we're facing highest electric bills of any state in the South, and we need to do something about it. And this stupid thing that they're doing down in Montgomery, trying to fix the Public Service Commission, is just a wrong-headed approach. We need voters to step up and do those kind of things. I think people are concerned sometimes about their safety. I think our law enforcement is doing a really good job of trying to protect the public. I think that's happening, but there are still issues that we got to deal with. We're still dealing with too many overdoses in our communities, and we got to deal something with that. I'll tell you the thing that I think, though, that is somewhat universal across the state. It's not just in the rural areas, but it's the high cost of health care and the inability to get health insurance for your families. There are so many people in this state that could benefit from expanding Medicaid, because here's the thing about that, and this is what folks don't fully, I think, understand, is that, first of all, our Medicaid eligibility in Alabama is, it is strict. You can only make $5,000 a year or something like that in order to qualify for Medicaid. That's nothing. That's literally nothing in today's world. But yet, and so people that make above that don't qualify but yet they don't make enough money to purchase health insurance because of the high cost. So we've got this coverage gap that hopefully Medicaid expansion could help fill with that. Now we've lost, thanks to Tommy Tuberville and Republicans in Congress, they've not allowed the ACA subsidies, the Affordable Care Act subsidies that people relied on to actually make up that difference to buy. Now we've got another 150,000 people or so that are having to make a choice between buying gas for their automobiles, paying their rent, paying their housing, their mortgage costs, buying groceries, or having health care insurance. That's not really much of a choice when you've got daily necessities that you've got to do. Those are the stories that I hear all the time, Joe. I mean, I hear those all of the time. We've got to do something about the cost. You know, for years, when I was growing up and started in public service and U.S. attorney and even to some extent the U.S. Senate, we used to always hear, well, okay, we can't raise the minimum wage in Alabama. We don't need to raise the minimum wage in Alabama, which, by the way, I totally disagree with. I think we got to raise the minimum wage, but we heard it because it doesn't cost as much to live in Alabama. You know, so it's fine. Well, guess what? Housing costs, gasoline costs, electric bill, they're now come up, way up where our costs, where our wages have not. So it's not the same as it used to be.
Right.
And I think people deserve a living wage. I think that the legislature ought to do something. I think they, at very minimum, give Birmingham the authority back to raise it if they need to. So that's a long answer to say.
No, I'm glad you did that, because now I can sit here and say, as I'm sitting here talking to you over a conversation, you understand.
I think I
You
do.
get it. You get it.
And I will tell you this, and I think most people that know me know this enough about me. If I don't understand, I'll tell you, and I want to understand. That's a difference with so many folks, I think. I'm going to be out there. That's another reason that I was talking a minute ago about a governor that gets out into the state, so that governor does understand and understands exactly what people are feeling, what they need, and do whatever the governor can do to try to help those needs.
Do we have anybody have any questions in the audience?
Mr. Doug, it was a pleasure to meet you earlier on. But anyways, I don't know if you remember that mass shooting in this area about 2 years ago. Yeah, I was asleep when that happened, but really terrified. What is your opinion about like gun control, or kind of to make sure that doesn't happen again or something like that?
Yeah. The question is about gun safety.
Okay.
That's the bottom line, you know, and it's interesting because I did my maiden speech on the floor of the United States Senate about that very issue, about gun safety. I took office right before the Parkland high school shooting down in Florida. And so it was a hot topic, and it was something that was important to me because, quite frankly, I'm a hunter. I've got guns. I enjoy it. I enjoy just shooting. Okay. I mean, you know, going out for target practice. But I think we need, you know, I'd love to see more common sense gun safety measures. The interesting thing about the shooting that occurred right here, just a block or so away, if I recall correctly, that shooting occurred because of with a pistol that had what they call a Glock switch on it.
The switcher, yeah.
And it really literally turns a semi-automatic pistol into an automatic pistol. Well, the interesting thing about that is that prompted a bill in the Alabama legislature. And the guy running for lieutenant governor that I was talking about that's on this change ticket, Phil Lensler from Montgomery, sponsored and got passed the first piece of gun safety measures that this state has seen in decades. And that is to prohibit those Glock switches, which was a big deal. So we're very conscious of that, but we also want to see this. I want to pay more attention to what law enforcement is saying about this issue. Law enforcement did not want to have the concealed carry permits go away. They lobbied to keep the concealed carry. It's a safety issue. I think we should listen to local law enforcement about what they're doing. So I think that there's a lot of things, but at the end of the day, federal firearms are going to be regulated by Congress. And they are so dang dysfunctional right now. I wouldn't expect anything coming out of there. But the more we can at least bring attention to it, and the fact that Phil was able to get that one piece of legislation passed means that people are paying attention. As long as you have somebody that's effective and that can do it. And that's why he's going to be a great lieutenant governor.
We have more questions out there?
Considering the investments from Google into your career with all of these data centers coming up, especially in the Black Belt of Alabama, in Bessemer, where income's low and also a Black demographic areas, how are you going to fight these data centers when we think you're in their back pocket?
Yeah, no, look, I think the data centers are tied also to AI, and we've got to do them. I don't think the state is doing enough to look at the future consequences of AI at all. We're just kind of like sticking our head in the sand. And candidly, the state that I think is kind of doing the most is a governor who I'm not that crazy about, and that's Ron DeSantis in Florida. But he has kind of drawn the line in the sand about some of these data centers and about AI. I think we've got the biggest problem I see in Alabama government right now is not the data centers per se, it's how they come about. They don't, everything is done in secret, everything is done in cloak of darkness. The same is happening with solar farms. I'm all about solar energy, okay? But there was a solar farm down in Stockton, Alabama, that's about 4,000 or 5,000 acres that's going to butt right up to the Alabama River down there and maybe going into Mobile Bay when they start doing all this. And they just did it all under cover of darkness, and all of a sudden it became public. They just announced another thing yesterday, contingent. So the problem, I think, is this. I think Alabama, this all goes back to what we were talking about a minute ago, and that's having a government that is transparent. And that is a government that says, if you want to build a data center, fine. Well, we're going to start doing it in public from the very beginning. Talk to us. Don't come ask for forgiveness. You need to ask for permission. And let's go through all of this. The biggest problem that I think created a controversy out in Bessemer, which is unheard of to me, and that is that the Bessemer City Council and mayor signed a non-disclosure agreement with the people who want to build a data center. They're a public entity, okay? You don't do things in secret like that when you're a public entity and you've got taxpayer dollars and incentives that are going in there. So I think the more transparency that we can do and we tend to put the cart before the horse these days. I want to turn that around. And because look, data centers are going to be needed. There's no question about that. They need to pay for themselves and not spread that electricity everywhere. There's a way you can do that as well. So my thought is that let's just put a hold on a lot of these things right now and get it all out in the open. What I worry about, what I seriously worry about is that Alabama is all of a sudden going to be, for lack of a better term, the dumping ground for data centers and solar farms and everything else. It's going to destroy the land and destroy our ecosystem. And all that electricity is going to be going to other states. But because our legislature, because our elected officials just put their head in the sand and let these things happen without public input, it's an easy picking to come to Alabama. We need to change that. Not opposed to them, but I want them to have to work for it and disclose to the people of the state the ramifications for every one of them. Because ultimately, after they're built, they don't create that many jobs. Okay, the construction does, but it doesn't take much to run a data center.
Any more questions?
You mentioned, someone sent me this question. Someone sent this question. You mentioned possibly stopping taxes as it relate to overtime.
Yeah.
Would this apply to bonuses as well?
It's a good question. I hadn't thought about it. Just candidly, I hadn't thought about it. See, the Alabama legislature a few years ago got ahead of even President Trump and passed a bill, Republicans and Democrats alike, passed a bill that would not require taxes, income taxes, Alabama income taxes on overtime. But then they let it sunset. They let it lapse because it was all they thought, oh my Lord, they just didn't do their math right or something. And it was costing the state more So they just let it lapse. And so there's been that history where we have done it where overtime. I'm not sure about bonuses. I haven't really thought about that. My biggest concern about bonuses is that certain folks would manipulate that a little bit. And they would all of a sudden, they would keep their salary down and say, oh, don't worry about it. We're going to pay you a bonus later on. Because see, when a business pays a bonus like that, they wouldn't have to match the Social Security or anything like that probably. And so I think that's a little bit of a slippery slope. But over time, we ought to put that back and reinstate that, in my view.
Any more questions?
Yes, we do. We have one off of Facebook from Ms. Buffy Watts. The question was, what can you and will you do for seniors who have $0 copay for prescriptions and doctor visits and now have one? When you go from $0 to $5 per subscription, it's tough. It's really tough. And especially for 5 to 10 different prescriptions at a time, it's really hard.
Yeah, that's a tough question, and I'm not sure there's very much the state of Alabama can do unless we do something with Medicaid. The Medicare, Medicaid programs like that are all federally run. My biggest fear for Medicaid and Social Security and Medicare is that folks like Tuberville want to privatize it, and if that happens, it's going to be a lot more for folks. I'll take a look and see if there's something that the state can do on copays. I'm just not sure under the current law that there is, but we'll take a look at it.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Kind of piggyback off the privatization of Medicaid. What does that look like, and what would that? You say you're kind of afraid of that. So what is that?
Well, look, there are certain folks in Congress that have been wanting to privatize Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security for a long time. They want to put this with their hedge fund buddies in New York, let those folks make a fortune. And I don't think it'll bring any better return. It won't be the guarantee that the federal government has. And it's just another way for folks that are connected to certain people in the administration or Congress to make money. And I think that is, people have paid into Social Security, people pay into Medicare. It is the kind of thing that I think that the federal government has a long history. Now, do we need some changes? That's all federal government stuff, by the way. So maybe when you get a U.S. Senate candidate, you can ask them what they would do on this. We were looking at a lot of different studies to try to shore up the finances of Medicare and Medicaid, because they're teetering. It's gonna be tough as my generation moves out,
Right.
and more of these baby boomers come in and start getting Medicaid and Medicare. It's going to be tough because there's a lot of money going out, but it's a federal program. I just don't want to see it privatized. I want to see the United States government continue to honor the commitment that they have made to seniors and folks that are struggling to make ends meet. That is what government should be about.
Any more questions out there? Got one behind you.
Good morning, good morning. I want to talk about education.
Yeah.
So as it relates to the state of Alabama, so we've been, I'd say for the last 50 years, somewhere between the 40s and 50s as it relates to our rank within the country.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm curious about your approach to that, specifically as you think about the contrast as it relates to city schools in Birmingham versus public schools, county schools.
Right. And
the sort of dichotomy that comes with the amount of learning that are involved within those two districts.
Yep.
How do we improve those numbers, not only for Birmingham, but Alabama as a whole?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that is going to take a long, the answers will go beyond a 4-year term of anything. Okay. This is a long-term commitment I think that we have to make in this state. The state has done a better job in the last few years on certain things. For instance, our 3rd grade reading is up pretty good. Our pre-K, centers and learning has done a really good job of things for the early age. But we're still way behind with STEM, with science, and, math, and those STEM subjects. We are still very, very low. We have uneven funding across, even though, and it's because, in part, the way we fund education and the fact that you've got a certain formula. But, if you go down to some of the poorer counties, that's about all they get, is what the state gets. You go to Mountain Brook and Hoover, Vestavia, property taxes are higher. People go there and pay those property taxes so that they can fund education. So we have to worry about that. But here's a couple of things that I think that are really important to help kind of turn this. Number one, I'm not a fan of what they call the CHOOSE Act. Okay, the CHOOSE Act is allowing state tax dollars, your money, to go to private schools. Okay, you can choose, if right now, if you make up to a certain income, put your children in private school, get a huge tax credit, which means that, and that money goes to a private school. I don't like that idea. I don't like taxpayer dollars going to private schools. Nothing against private schools. I think they serve a great purpose. I'd have no problem with private schools, but that's a choice that people make to put their children in private schools. I don't think my money, taxpayer money, should be paid into the private schools. That's number one. The second part about the CHOOSE Act is they're about to remove those income caps, which means there's going to be more education dollars going out of public schools and into private schools. I'm a big proponent of public schools. I saw recently where Birmingham City Schools have increased their enrollment for the first time in a number of years. That is showing improvement. It takes that kind of commitment from folks to do this. The other thing I would say about the CHOOSE Act is that there's no accountability, there's no transparency. Once that money goes, you don't know how it's being spent. I don't think that's good for any state dollar, okay, to not be able to do that. The other thing that I think would help education as much as anything, and it will cost money, and that is to give teachers a significant pay raise. I'm talking about more than 2%.
I think we need to give a round of applause for that right there, y'all. We give a round of applause for that.
And it's not just the teachers that are teaching now that deserve that pay raise. It's the retired teachers. For the longest time, the retirement systems and the retirement plan for teachers was one of the things that drew people to the teaching profession. They can make a decent living and then have a decent retirement. Teachers that have been retired have not got a cost of living raise in like 30 years, or at least since 2008, something along those lines. And right now, I saw in the legislature, this is typical of what our legislature does. They ignore all of this over the years. They ignore the significant cost of living that teachers and retirees face, but ever so often, they'll throw them a little bone. They'll get them not even a full cup of coffee. They'll get them a shot. Okay.
Espresso.
So there's a bill right now to give retired teachers, to make up for the fact that they hadn't had a raise in their retirement system for years and years. Their health care is costing more. They're going to give them a $300 check. Okay, I'm sure that they'll appreciate that $300, and it's gone like that. It is not going to do the thing. We have got, if we're going to change the system in Alabama, we have got to invest in our education and not just give it lip service. And you invest by starting with teachers and infrastructure. Tell you the other way we can fund some of that. Pass a lottery. Bring in hundreds of millions of dollars a year through a lottery and designate some of it for teacher salary. Okay? Let's set it aside. Keep that lottery money out of the hands of what I call the grubby little hands of the legislature.
Mm-hmm.
Lock it away and put it for teacher salaries. Right now, retiree salaries and healthcare, and maybe you have some other stuff to do, some issues with law enforcement and some other things too. But the investment is the real critical component, and that is so. But it's a long-term process. But you know what, guys? It can be done. Right now, all of those matrix that you're talking about, we have slipped below Mississippi. Okay, because about 12, 14 years ago, Mississippi started the program that's now known as the Mississippi Miracle. And they started investing, but not huge investments. They started putting teachers' aides and tutors and things like that around that did not cost an awful lot of money, that really raised the standards of their education in Mississippi across the board. That is a program where we need to seriously look at and replicate. But it's a great question because everything comes back to that. And I'm going to tell you the biggest challenge that we've got going into education is not just the money, but we got to figure out how to do this AI business so that we can start training our kids, not just to use ChatGPT, but how to incorporate into businesses and how they're going to incorporate, because it is ultimately going to affect all of us. It's going to affect the job market and the economy down the road. So thanks.
Anybody's got any questions? All right. I know we want to be respectful of your time, but we've been talking about politics. We've been talking about all these things in Birmingham, Alabama, and everything. I want to ask, how you been doing? It sounds like you're having fun.
Yeah, well, most of the time.
Most of the time.
You know, I mean, I got to be honest. Sometimes I wake up, well, a lot of times I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking, what in the hell are you doing? But it doesn't take much for me to either look at the news, look at my phone, talk to somebody, and understand that there are things worth fighting for, and we can do it. And there's something out there. And every time I come to something like this, and every time I go to visit with people, and we get the reaction that we get, it makes it all worthwhile. So yeah, I'm not doing all the things that I like to have fun with.
Right.
I didn't get to go deer hunting, but a couple of times this year, I've set a little afternoon to fish in a couple of weeks, you know, and so you have to make the fun when you can do it. But I love getting out. I love seeing folks. I love being able to talk back and forth. When I was in the Senate, I used to love town halls. Unlike most every politician you see today who avoids them like the plague, I like to do those. I like to get out, and I like to be challenged I hope to be challenged when I'm governor, when I do these things, and people ask the tough questions, and that's how you move as a society. It's how you progress as a state. So I'm doing all right.
I wanted to ask you at the beginning of the interview, but I want to before you get out here. So when you decided, I'm going to do this, who did you tell first, and how did it go over with the family?
Oh, I didn't tell anybody first.
Okay.
I had to quietly massage things at home. And we had to talk to Miss Louise a lot before. You would never tell Louise Jones, honey, I've decided to do this, and here's why.
Can I ask you this question?
Yeah.
How did that conversation go? The first part, how did you ease into it?
It was actually easier than I thought.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because initially the reaction is, Doug, we've been there, done that. And you're doing some things, we're enjoying this. But she gets pretty frustrated too with things going. She talks more to the television than I do when she's watching the news.
Right.
And it's not pretty. Okay. And so when we would see this and we see things going on, and we would talk about the role of the governor, the role of the first lady, and how you could make changes. And that got her thinking a little bit more, because at the end of the day, we felt like, and we didn't bargain for this, but there was just not a lot of, we felt like if we didn't do this, then you wouldn't have this change ticket, that we needed to help jumpstart some things around the state. And so the more we talked about that, the more that we felt like that we could make a difference. And I'm going to tell you the other thing, that it was not just us talking, but it was the number of people that would come talk to us when they would see us out, having coffee, having dinner, out on whatever we might be, pumping gas at a gas station. The number of people that would come to us and say, to ask, please do this, get back in the game. We need your help. But the thing that we heard the most that I think really got to both of us was a phrase that was a different turn on a phrase that we heard after the 2017 race. Okay. After the 2017 race, 1 year into Donald Trump, so many people in this state, so many people across the country said, you gave us hope. And that wasn't Doug Jones gave us hope. It was the people of Alabama that had given folks hope that they were going to be fine, that we're going to be okay. We were going to get through this. If Alabama could do this, so could anywhere else, and we can get through it. Since January of this past year, what we heard the most was not "you gave us hope," but "are we going to be okay?" And it was a little bit more of that cry for that. And they were coming up to us. And again, it's not anything we bargained for, but we thought there is something out there. There is that need. There is going to be that energy. And we saw it when we kicked off on Southside in December. 1,000 people just rocking the place.
Right.
And so it was a process, Joe. It was a process that we got there. But she is all in.
She's all in now.
She is the secret weapon.
I love to meet her. I would love to meet her one day.
Yeah. You should have her on. You should have her on rather than
Ms.
me.
Jones,
She would be great.
Ms. Jones, would love to have you on the show. Last two questions, and then what I always do with my guests, I always turn the show over to you and let you talk to people. Two questions, last two. When you talk to God, how does he talk to you? Is it a voice? Is it intuition? Is it something that you feel? When he speaks to you, how do you hear him?
You know, that's a fascinating question. It's not a voice. I think it's more of a demonstration. There's a door here, Doug. You can either go through it or not. And if you look back, if ever someone ever decides to write a biography of Doug Jones, almost every chapter will be a door. And I was lucky enough to be there when that door opened. And there were times that I didn't walk through the door, but there were so many times that I saw that door and I saw that opportunity. And that's how I think my faith guides me, to be able to, one, recognize there's a door, and two, to take that leap of faith to walk through it. Even if you're ultimately not successful in what you're doing, I think every time I've walked through that door, I've been able to make a difference somewhere. And that's pretty special. That's important.
Last question from me before I turn you over to the audience. What would you tell the 17-year-old Doug Jones, after this long life you've lived, the things you experienced? If you could look back right now and say something to him, what would you say?
I'd say be patient. Don't get in a hurry. Smell the roses. I think I was in a little bit too much of a hurry early on in my life. And, you know, I mean, I was in my 60s before I first got elected to public office. Don't get in a hurry. Enjoy the things you do. Enjoy your, family. Enjoy your friends. Enjoy life itself. And make sure that you don't take yourself too seriously.
Wow. Want to cheers to
Cheers.
you. Thank you for the cup of coffee, and I'm going to turn the show over to you. The camera is yours, the show is yours.
Oh, well, thanks. Look, folks, this is, Alabama's got an amazing opportunity right now. We haven't had an opportunity like this in a long time. It's that door that's open that I was talking about a minute ago. I didn't think that was this door that was opening. I wouldn't be doing this. At my age, in my stage, place in life, it would have been real easy to stay at home. But there's opportunities for this state. There's opportunities for family, for community, to move this state forward. And I'm hoping that this change ticket, that what we're leading, is going to be that change for the better in Alabama, to give people the choices, to give people something more to look forward to. So what I would say, please get out and vote. Register to vote if you're not registered. Vote on May 19th. People don't vote hardly at all in the primaries. We need a good turnout in the primaries. Then in November, let's have a turnout that will show the country what Alabama really is and what we can do. So please help us out. That's what I would say. We're in this for you, not for us.
Good luck on the campaign
Thank you,
trail.
buddy. Thank you.
All right, guys, you guys heard it. Thank you guys for following the show today. Hope you guys got a lot of information. Make sure you share the video out there. And Doug, how can they find you out there on social media?
Easy. Doug Jones, the website is dougjones.com. I'm on X at Doug Jones. Same on Blue Sky. For Instagram and Facebook, it's like Doug Jones Bama or something like that.
Right.
So we're doing. I'm not on TikTok yet. I feel like I feel like I got to take dance lessons or something before I get on TikTok. But we're
Right.
working on
Working
that.
on that. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Share the video out there. Go ahead and follow Doug Jones, and we'll see you guys in May for the election. Have a good day.